Coca-Cola doesn't actually sell you Coca-Cola. Sit with that for a second. It sounds insane. You've seen the bottle in every gas station, every vending machine, every corner store on every continent, in villages that don't have reliable electricity but somehow have a working Coke fridge. You'd think a company that omnipresent must own everything: the trucks, the factories, the shelves. It doesn't. It never did. The most recognized brand on Earth built its empire on almost nothing physical at all. No fleet of trucks in its name, no wall of factories with its logo on the roof. Just a formula, a name, and a decision so counterintuitive that most businesses still get it backwards today. You don't need to own the machine to control it. You just need to own the one part nobody else can copy. Once you see how they pulled that off, you'll never look at a vending machine the same way again. Here's the part that breaks people's brains when they first hear it. The Coca-Cola company doesn't bottle Coca-Cola. It doesn't own most of the trucks that deliver it. It doesn't own most of the plants that make it. Picture the map, thousands of factories worldwide stamped with that red logo, and understand that almost none of them belong to Coca-Cola at all. It sells a concentrate, a syrup, to independently owned companies scattered across the planet, and those companies do the rest. No massive factories to maintain, no fleets of delivery trucks to ensure, no army of local employees to manage across 200 countries. Somebody else carries that weight, the heavy, expensive, risky weight of actually making the product exist in the physical world. Coca-Cola just keeps the formula, and the money keeps flowing back to Atlanta. This wasn't luck. It wasn't a masterstroke drawn up in a boardroom either. It was a decision made over a century ago by a man who almost threw the whole idea away because he didn't believe in it. In 1899, two lawyers walked into the office of Asa Candler, the man who owned Coca-Cola at the time, and asked for the rights to bottle it. Candler barely paused. Fountain drinks were the business, a soda jerk mixing syrup and carbonated water behind a counter. Bottling seemed like a novelty, maybe even a liability. So he signed away the bottling rights for what amounted to almost nothing, certain he was offloading a headache onto two men with more ambition than sense. He wasn't offloading a headache. He was handing over the blueprint for the most efficient distribution machine in the history of consumer products, and he had no idea what he'd just done. What those two lawyers built wasn't a bottling plant. It was a template. A contract that could be copied city after city, territory after territory, without Coca-Cola ever spending a dollar building the infrastructure themselves. Somebody else raised the capital. Somebody else took the risk. Coca-Cola just cashed the check. By 1920, that single contract had multiplied into more than 1,000 bottling plants across the country. And then it jumped oceans. When the Second World War broke out, the president of Coca-Cola made a promise that sounded purely patriotic on the surface. Every soldier in uniform, he said, would get a bottle of Coca-Cola for 5 cents wherever they were stationed, whatever it cost the company. Read that headline again and notice what it's really doing. To keep that promise, Coca-Cola didn't ship bottles across the ocean. It shipped the machine itself. Bottling plants went up near military bases across Europe, North Africa, and the Pacific, dozens of them, built under wartime pressure, staffed by local labor, running on the exact same franchise logic that had already conquered America. The war ended. The soldiers went home. The bottling plants stayed exactly where they were. Coca-Cola didn't just survive the war with its reputation intact, it walked away with a permanent international network it never could have justified funding in peacetime. Built under the cover of patriotism, paid for as a wartime necessity, and left standing as infrastructure for the next 50 years of global expansion. The company didn't chase opportunity. It built a system so flexible that even a world war could be absorbed into the machine and used it to grow it. So what exactly is this machine? Because once you understand its mechanics, you start seeing it everywhere. Strip it down to the parts and it's almost embarrassingly simple. Coca-Cola owns the syrup, the formula locked in a vault, famously secret, famously irreplaceable, the one piece of the puzzle nobody else can touch. It sells that syrup to independently owned bottling partners, not employees, separate businesses, some of them billion-dollar publicly traded companies in their own right. each signing a contract for exclusive rights to bottle and distribute in one territory. In return, they absorb the expensive part, the factories, the refrigeration, the trucks, the shelf space in every gas station and grocery aisle in their region. Coca-Cola offloaded the capital-intensive, high-risk, low-margin labor. It kept the highest margin, lowest risk asset for itself, the formula and the brand. Most people studying successful companies assume bigger means owning more. Coca-Cola proves the opposite. Find the one truly scarce piece of the puzzle. Let everyone else fight over the rest. But scarcity alone wasn't enough. Hand your product to thousands of independently owned strangers and you risk the brand fragmenting into 1,000 slightly different versions of itself. So how do you keep a bottle filled in one city identical to one filled on the other side of the planet? You put the answer in glass. In 1915, Coca-Cola commissioned a bottle so distinctive that by design, a person should recognize it by touch, alone, in the dark, even shattered on the ground. Every bottling partner, no matter the continent, was contractually bound to that exact contour. It looks like packaging. It functioned as an inspector, quality control disguised as design, guaranteeing at a glance that nothing had been diluted or altered without Coca-Cola needing to check a single plant itself. Formula, brand, bottle, all three protected, all three franchised out at scale. None of it means anything if the product isn't everywhere the moment you want it. And that obsession is where the story turns from clever business into something closer to psychological warfare. Robert Woodruff took over the company in the 1920s, chasing a single sentence that sounds almost absurd until you realize how literally he meant it. He wanted Coca-Cola within arm's reach of desire, everywhere, at all times. Not available, not popular, within arm's reach. The instant a person wanted it, it needed to already be there, waiting. That sentence became the design principle behind a century of expansion. Every new bottling territory, every vending machine wedged into every train station, every war zone, every gas station on every remote highway. All of it, one long campaign to close the gap between wanting and having until the gap just stopped existing. Here's where it turns into a psychology story. When a product is always there the instant you want it, something shifts in how your brain relates to it. It stops feeling like a choice you make. It starts feeling like a fact of the environment, the same way you don't choose that the sky is blue. Coca-Cola didn't just build distribution, it engineered inevitability. That's not marketing, that's architecture. And once a company builds architecture like that into the physical world, competitors stop fighting over taste. They're fighting to exist in a space that's already been claimed. Which raises an uncomfortable question. How many of your own daily habits aren't really yours at all? Just the residue of something being placed within arm's reach over and over until you stopped noticing it was ever a choice. The company wasn't done. In 1928, Coca-Cola began its relationship with the Olympic Games, serving drinks to athletes in Amsterdam. Not a random sponsorship, a calculated move onto the biggest, most emotionally charged stage on Earth, a stage built entirely around human striving and national pride. Same principle, different target. If the product couldn't always be in your hand, it could at least be standing beside the moments that mattered most to you. The brand stopped sitting near your body and started sitting near your memories, and memories compound in ways a vending machine never could. Strip away the red logo, the polar bears, the jingles, and what's left is a company that made one of the most consequential decisions in business history. It separated ownership from control. It didn't need to own the trucks to control where the product went. It didn't need to own the factories to control how the product was made. It only needed to own the one irreplaceable thing: formula, brand, the meaning stitched to both, and let the rest of the world carry the weight. Go back to where we started. Coca-Cola doesn't sell you Coca-Cola. What it actually sells is scarcity, the one thing on Earth nobody else legally can reproduce, wrapped in a promise to always, always be within arm's reach. Everything else, every truck, every factory, every bottling contract, exists only to serve those two things. We tend to assume power comes from control, from owning more, managing more, gripping every piece of the operation tightly.
Coca-Cola's entire empire argues the opposite. Its power came from identifying the one thing that was truly irreplaceable and then deliberately letting go of everything else. That's not just a lesson about soda, that's a lesson about where leverage actually lives in a career, a business, a life. Most people exhaust themselves trying to control everything. The ones who build empires find the one thing only they can offer, then build a system that runs without them. Coca-Cola was never in the soda business. It's in the business of being irreplaceable and letting the rest of the world carry the weight. If that shift in the way you see things is worth having again, subscribe, because the next hidden system we break down might be one you're standing inside of right now without ever knowing it was built.